Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. This is Enoch's Tutorials. Don't forget to like and subscribe them after watching, and click on the notification bell so you can receive every update from this channel. In this video, we're going to look at the introduction to classification of living organisms. That is how living organisms were classified initially based on the features that exist between them, and also the differences that exist between them. As I said earlier, we are going to look at the example of some of these categories, that is organisms under some of these categories, and how they differ from each other. Some common features about the groups under the various categories or the classification schemes. So let's start. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on the notification bell so you can receive every bit of update from this channel. So let's begin. So basically, classification scheme is based on how organisms differ from each other, or let's say how two organisms resemble each other. So scientists, what they did was that when two organisms tend to have similar features or they resemble each other in either physical or genetic features, they put those organisms in one group, and those that are different are also isolated and dropped in different groups. So the underlying principle of classification is that all organisms are classified based on their resemblances and their differences into groups. So two groups of classification are having organisms that are very resembling to each other, and two different groups will have difference in characteristics. Each group will have similar features, and the two different groups will have different features. Now, the study of classification of living organisms is called taxonomy. So taxonomy is the study of classification of living organisms. Scientists study classification. So the scientific study of classification is called taxonomy. Bear in mind, the taxonomy word is just the scientific study of classification. Now let's look at some terms under classification here. Now, all organisms in the universe were grouped initially before subgroupings were done. So the largest grouping of organisms, or the largest taxonomic rank, we call it the largest taxonomic rank, is called the domain. So the domain is the highest taxonomic rank of classification. In the earlier times, all organisms were grouped into three different categories. So these groups are what we call the domains. So we had three main domains of classification that are made of organisms with different or distinct features. The next rank after the domain is called the kingdom. So the kingdom is the subgroup under the domain, or the next hierarchy under the domain. So the kingdom is the next level of classification, and we have about 5 or 6 kingdoms. We are going to look in the next slide why we are saying it is 5 or 6. So we have 5 or 6 kingdoms of classification. We have what we call taxonomic ranks. So the taxonomic rank is just a hierarchy that shows how organisms that have been grouped into different categories have similar features. So the largest taxonomic rank is the one in which all the organisms in the universe were classified into. And the groups under the domains, I will call it domains. The groups under the domains are what we call the kingdoms. The groups under the kingdoms are what we call the phylum. You can have classes, you can have orders, you can have families, genera, and species. So the various groups of the domains are called kingdom. This is very simple. It just means that when we take two organisms in, let's say, phylum, these two organisms will share a more closely related features or similar features than the organisms in the domain. When we take two organisms in a class, they will share a more related feature than organisms in a kingdom. So this hierarchy is just to minimize some kind of differences that exist between organisms. Let's take one by one. When we take domain, as we said earlier, has 3 domains or 3 groups. And the 3 groups are what we call the 3 domains. We are going to look at them in the next slide. And each of these domains have subgroups. Each of these domains have subgroups. So the subgroups of the domains are what we call the kingdoms. Now, kingdoms have subgroups too. The subgroups of the kingdoms are what we call the phylum. So the phylum as in singular and phyla as in plural. So phyla, the groups under the phyla are what we call classes. The groups under classes are called orders. We have family and genera and species. So each of these have some kind of an increased similarity as we go down. Organisms in the order will have more closely features than organisms in a class. Organisms in a domain will have different features than organisms in an order. That is to say that when we say we pick two organisms randomly from the domain category, the chance of them being different is so high as compared to, let me say, when we take two organisms from, let's say, species. So species, which is the least taxonomic rank, is made of organisms that are very similar in their features. Human beings are species, dogs are species, cats are species, elephants are species, snakes are species, and these ones, they are closely related to each other than organisms in a domain. Let's say when you pick, let's say, human being and a snake. Let's take some example of the various taxonomic rank. So the domain is the largest taxonomic rank. An example of a domain is called an Icaria. An example of a kingdom is called Animalia. Phyla is called Data. You can have Mammalia as a class, Primate as an order, Hominidae as a family, Homo as a genus, and Species as a sapien. So bear in mind, when we take, let's say, two Mammalia or two mammals, the organisms here will be more close. That is, they will share more close features than organisms under, let's say, domain or even kingdom. Species are organisms that are having the same characteristics or features, but not at a genetic level. So on the physical level, an example of a species is, let's say, human being. When we take two human beings, either two males, two females, or a male or female, these two human beings are more similar to when we take two organisms of a domain, like, let's say, a snake and, let's say, a human being. So as we move towards the down hierarchy, we tend to increase similarity. As we said earlier, we have three main domains of classifications and 5 or 6 kingdoms of classification. So the domain is the largest taxonomic rank, as we said, the largest, as shown here, it is the largest taxonomic rank. We have three main domains. All organisms in the universe, or all living organisms in the universe, can be put into one of these categories, either being a bacteria, archaea, or eukarya. So every living organism on Earth falls under these three, with the exception of viruses that share some kind of distinct features that distinct them from any of these three categories. So every organism on Earth falls under one of these three categories. So the subgroups of the domains, as we said earlier, is what we call the kingdoms. We have 6 or 5 kingdoms, as we are going to explain here. So the subgroup of bacteria, which we call an eubacteria, is one kingdom. A subgroup of an archaea, which we call an archaebacteria, is another kingdom. Then 4 subgroups of eukarya are known, which is under kingdoms. You can have protista, you can have plantae, fungi, and animalia. So bacteria and archaea are together called prokaryotes. So some books will put eubacteria and archaebacteria as one, as prokaryotes. So prokaryotes can be used as one unit term to call eubacteria and archaebacteria. In that case, we can have 5 kingdoms where the eubacteria and the archaebacteria are collectively called prokaryotes as one, then 2 as protista, plantae, fungi, and animalia. So we can have 5 kingdoms when bacteria and archaebacteria are put as one, as prokaryotes or monera, and also as 6 when the monera or prokaryotes are splitted as eubacteria and archaebacteria. Check this out. We have 3 main domains, as we said earlier. We have bacteria, archaea, and eukarya. So bacteria is one domain, archaea and the domain, and eukarya as another domain. So the kingdom under the bacteria is the eubacteria. The kingdom under archaea is the archaebacteria. Then the 4 kingdoms under eukarya are the animalia, protista, plantae, and fungi. So there are 6 or 5 kingdoms of classification. As we said earlier, all living organisms can be classified as prokaryotes or eukaryotes. So the prokaryotes can be splitted into archaea and eukarya, or bacteria, as what do you call it? 3 domains. So the 3 domains of classification is eukaryota or eukaryotes, bacteria, and archaea. So bear in mind, you can have archaea, bacteria, and eukaryotes as the 3 main domains. Then collectively, the bacteria and the archaea or the archaebacteria are collectively called prokaryotes. So maybe some books will say we have 2 domains because he will use the prokaryote to blend the archaea and the bacteria. Bear in mind that archaebacteria or the archaea and the bacteria are all prokaryotes. We are come to explain why. Now, these are the kingdoms, that is the various division of the various domains. So when we take a domain eukaryote or eukarya, the subdivisions under them are Animalia, Plantae, Fungi, and Protista. So these ones are the kingdoms under domain eukarya. Now we can have another kingdom as Ebacteria and Archaebacteria. So Archaebacteria, Ebacteria, Protista, Fungi, Plant, and Animalia makes 6 kingdoms. If you want to use one general term to call the Archaebacteria and Ebacteria, we can say we have 5 kingdoms as Prokaryotes, Protista, Fungi, Plantae, and Animalia. The difference between prokaryotes and eukaryotes is that eukaryotic organisms have membrane-bound organelles. Eukaryotic organisms have membrane-bound organelles, whereas prokaryotic organisms have non-membrane-bound organelles. So every living organism on Earth can be a prokaryote, eukaryote, or virus. A question to be answered at the comment section. Answer this question at the comment section. Is virus really a living organism or not? Because it shares some kind of distinct features that make it distinct from all living organisms. So a virus can only live when it finds itself in the body of a host cell. So is it a living organism or not? Eukaryotic cells, as I said earlier, have a membrane-bound organelles. If you understand cytology or cells very well, say organelles are various structures in the cells. So all the structures in the cells are called organelles. For example, let's say vacuoles, let's say mitochondria, chloroplast, and the rest are called organelles. If they are membrane bounded in an organism, then that organism is called an eukaryotic organism. If those organelles are scattered anyhow in the cytoplasm, that is without a membrane, then we call that organism a prokaryotic organism. Is that different between prokaryotes? Prokaryotes have their nuclear materials, or let's say they are organelles scattered in the cytoplasm, whereas eukaryotic cells have a membrane-bound organelles. So these are the 5 kingdoms, as we said earlier, in their features. The key features of these kingdoms are what is highlighted here. You can have kingdom Animalia. This is very eukaryotic because it has a membrane-bound organelles. It has no cell walls. It has no chloroplast, hence it is heterotroph. No chloroplast means it can't carry out photosynthesis, hence it is heterotroph. That is, it has to feed on other organisms for food because it can't prepare its own food. The next kingdom is kingdom Plantae, which is also eukaryotic because it has a membrane-bound organelles. It is multicellular because it has plenty cells in the system. The cell wall is made of what you call a cellulose. Cellulose is just a carbohydrate or a homopolysaccharide which is found in the cell wall of plant cells. The next one is chloroplast. It has chloroplast, means contains chlorophyll, which can carry out photosynthesis. Therefore, it is an autotroph. Photosynthesis yields an oxygen as a byproduct. So, Plantae or kingdom animals under kingdom Plantae produces oxygen as the byproduct. The next one is the kingdom Fungi, which is eukaryotic. Eukaryotic means it has a membrane-bound organelles. The cell wall is also made of chitin. Chitin is under polysaccharide, but a heteropolysaccharide found in the cell wall of fungi. It is heterotroph because it can prepare its own food, hence it must feed on other organisms' food. The next one is Protista, which is also eukaryotic, unicellular, and found in a cell. Now, Protista and Monera are all unicellular cells. They are made of only one cell. As we said earlier, Monera can be also called prokaryotes, and prokaryotes can be splitted into bacteria and archaebacteria. For us to have 6 kingdoms, unless we split the prokaryotes or Monera into bacteria Archaebacteria, Protista, Fungi, Plantae, and Animalia. In that sense, we have 6 kingdoms. But when we have 5 kingdoms, then you have to put the Archaebacteria and Ebacteria into one group to call it a Monera or a Prokaryote. So these are some few examples of organisms on the various classification. You can have here organisms and bacteria, you can have protozoans, you can have organisms under kingdom Archaea. You can have here organisms under kingdom Fungi, like mushrooms, molds, and yeast. You can have organisms under Protista. You can have here is Euglena. You can have algae. You can have Paramecium, and the rest. All these organisms fall under kingdom Protista. You can have kingdom Animalia, that is made of insects, squid. Human beings are part. Horses, sponges, and earthworms are all part or examples of organisms under kingdom Animalia. The next one is the kingdom Plantae. All plants falls under kingdom Plantae because they have chlorophyll that enable them to carry out photosynthesis. Ferns, broadleaf trees like mangoes, conifers, and mosses are all examples of plants that fall under kingdom Plantae. In the next video, we're going to take these kingdoms one by one and look at the detailed features of these various groups or the various kingdoms. So don't forget to like, click on the subscribe button, and press the notification bell and select all so you can receive all notifications or all updates from this channel. Thanks for watching. Keep in touch with Enoch Tutorial. You are going to be sorted with all your academic videos. Thank you.